Good evening, Des Moines, Iowa. This is Lefty with Doc and Lefty here at webcast1live.com. Thank you so much for tuning in. We are here every Tuesday night from 6 to 7 p.m. And just a cold one, a real cold one out. I know that one of the stereotypes about Iowans is that all we can do is talk about the weather. We'll try and do a little bit better than that tonight, but it is definitely cold, and I'm tired of it. Doc, I don't know about you.
Absolutely.
You were in Hawaii 2 months ago, and I can't believe it.
I can't believe I came back.
No kidding.
Oh, man. I will tell you what, though. As I was coming into the studio, I felt hope, and because of the change. And the reason I felt hope because of the change is because I finally had the sun hit me in the face.
The sun was still out.
For the first time, and it has to be 2 weeks.
It's got to be.
It has to be 2 weeks.
You're right about that. And I also really enjoy, because, I mean, I'm telling you, we've been doing this since, last October?
Yeah.
And when we re-kicked the show off and coming here at 6 o'clock, as wonderful it is to see you, but coming here in the darkest months of the year, leaving my office and getting here at 6 was just in the pitch black. Didn't do very well for the soul, my friend.
No, but it did do well for the show because it made both of us mean and irritable, so we could get after each other.
That's true, and we've been hearing a lot from folks that we're talking to about how to what they'd like to see more of, what they'd like to see less of, and they don't think that we get after each other enough.
Well, the problem is, here's what the problem is. Lefty is young and inexperienced in the gladiatorial arena, and I am old and beat up. So we really can't solve it the way, we've had a couple of them. So I actually had a suggestion that we go with chicken fighting, but I told him, I said, I don't like animal cruelty at all. So that's out.
And neither do I, which is one of the things, you know what, for argument's sake, I love animal cruelty. Let's
have more of it.
We need more animal cruelty, and I will take you on in any arena to defend my right to be cruel to animals.
Well, really, the problem with us getting after each other is we do get after each other, but the problem is when you're on the air, you gotta eliminate some of the bad verbiage we use occasionally.
We're sailors.
We're sailors, and then the second thing is for once in my life I met a lefty that was reasonable, and for all the listeners out there and people that know me, they all understand that finding a reasonable lefty is about like finding a needle in the haystack if that haystack is buried at the depths of a mine, right? You have to really dig, and then you get, holy cow, here's a haystack, now what, right?
I kind of feel like finding a reasonable conservative is searching for a needle in a haystack made of needles. And and
it's finding a piece of straw in a haystack.
Right. It makes it even more tough. But that's, I mean, the show is what it is. We're always looking for suggestions. We're always looking for ways to make it better. And if you are a small business or heck, even a large business, you want to sponsor or get your name on the show and maybe sponsor our little back and forth, we'd be certainly happy to hear from you.
We actually have filmed most of a commercial, and as soon as I can get somebody to edit it together, which will probably be Friday,
okay,
then we'll have a new commercial for Betroshan Associates.
Well, that's really exciting.
And then this weekend, because I've said this weekend we need to film commercials for the last 6 weeks,
right?
So this weekend, we need to get together. We'll film a commercial over there at your law firm.
Unfortunately, and we'll get to the reason why here in a second. This weekend is going to be completely impossible to do that, and we'll talk about that here in a second.
Well, we might as well talk about it now. Exciting news! My phone vibrates whenever I get something on Facebook, which I wish I could figure out how to knock that off. Anyway, I had like 4 buzzes in a row this afternoon, and I thought, what is going on? Lefty must be locked in mortal combat with some very reasonable Republican out there. And when I checked my Facebook, all I see is Sean Bright's in town. We're running, 4 gigs?
3 gigs.
3 gigs?
Yep.
So tell us where they're at.
Well, first of all, for the folks of you that have been following the show for a little while and have sort of maybe done a little bit of Facebook stalking of yours truly, I'm not saying that it's very many, but maybe perhaps a few people, they would know that I was in an acoustic duo with my good friend and colleague, Mr. Sean Bright. Sean moved to Florida last fall, and to be closer with his family. His mom lives down there, his brother and sister and their kids, and he left me high and dry, so to speak, up here in cold, dark Des Moines, Iowa.
In the northern wasteland.
Yes, to carry on and cavort around in the waves of the Gulf side of Florida. So anyway, he had scheduled this appearance that he's going to do on the St. Patrick's Day parade last year. He's going to do the parade again this year on Saturday downtown. So if you want to go see the parade, it's downtown. I believe it starts at noon, but I could be wrong about that.
Yes, because the Republicans will be down there. They've invited a lot of good conservatives down there, and hopefully they'll drown out the voices of the unreasonable liberals.
Well, and the fun haters and stuff, I suppose.
Fun haters. That would be unreasonable liberals.
So anyway, he's going to be doing that, but he booked this trip up here and said, well, why don't we do some gigs? And so it's the Something Bright Reunion Tour 2013, and we are playing 3 shows and 3 nights, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Thursday night's in Clive, Friday night is in West Des Moines, and Saturday night the big coup de grace is in Clive once again. And if you wanted to go to Facebook, you can probably find those. I know the doc has probably.
Well, what are the venues? I know one of them is the Moose.
Yeah, the Flying Moose is a tavern in Clive on Hickman there. Then the one in West Des Moines is at Jimmy's Big Ten. I don't know if it's called Jimmy's Big Ten anymore. I think it's just called Jimmy's on 8th Street. The old Jimmy's World Cafe, or American Cafe, if you guys remember that, on 8th Street in West Des Moines. And then Saturday is at Ducktail in Clive, and that's around 86 across from Mickey's. So if you're planning on going to the Irish Bar in Clive, pop on over, because it's going to be a really good time. We're playing for long stretches of time for all of these gigs, so there should be something for everybody. And it's going to be a great 3 days with my old partner, and then a good Sunday to kind of recover and be back to work on Monday.
All right. Now, if you guys have not gone down to listen to Blake play guitar and blow on that harmonica, it's really something special. He's really good at this. Except for when I asked to play Stevie Ray Vaughan, he said he couldn't do that. But I trust that he has that kind of talent. And his voice isn't, listening to him over here, it kind of grates on me, but when he sings, it's really pretty good. It's astonishing, really. So
there are a lot of people who are like that.
Yes, that's true. The one with that was the squirreliest for me is Frank Sinatra. If you listen to him, he sounded like a mouse, but then he'd sing, and if it wasn't so old, you would think that somebody was lip syncing and stuff.
Frank. Are you sure? You're thinking about Frank Sinatra?
Yeah.
Because I caught his performance as Nathan Detroit in the old Guys and Dolls movie.
Yeah.
And he had that sort of New York Italian sort of accent, but I don't know. He didn't seem quiet to me. I thought Frank was always kind of a verbose sort of guy.
Well, it's not that he's quiet, it's that his voice is mousy. It's kind of high and squeaky. And what was always fun is watching, he'd come on Johnny Carson at night and you could hear that voice. So that was something.
Yeah.
We're going to take a quick break, but I'm going to tell you, I'm going to get after Lefty today, and there's a couple reasons why. One, I think what's going on with sequester is absolutely outrageous, and I think that Obama is acting like an elitist jerk. Two, we've decided to come up with a name, or to come up with a segment that every week goes over the ongoing drama of the Republican Party. Blake, what did you come up with?
I said something along the lines of the Young and the Rhino, or
the Young and the Rhino could be the name of the segment. But if you have a better name or a better suggestion, you can text me. You can get on the chat and chat to Frank in there, or you can give us a call, because we always like talking to people besides us. The number there is 855-244-0077. We'll be back right after a brief commercial break.
Drug and alcohol addiction slowly steals a person's identity, tearing away pieces of their life little by little, until one day it seems like the hope of a happy future is gone and there's no chance of getting it back. Here at St. Gregory Retreat Centers, we can assure you that there is hope. Our unique approach to recovery begins with the understanding that the dysfunction and damage caused by addiction can be overcome, not just dealt with. Don't let another day go by. Call St. Gregory today.
Drink. Dance, party. Kitty's is the ultimate dance club in Des Moines. A huge dance floor with room to move, 3 bars to keep your drinks full, and kickin' DJs playing all your favorite dance music. At Kitty's, we've always got your birthday party planned with Birthday Fridays. That's right, when your birthday rolls around, there's only one place to go. Gather up your friends and head to Kitty's, where you drink free on the Friday of your birthday week. Find out more about Birthday Fridays at kittiesusa.com. Kitty's, all kinds of people, all kinds of music, all kinds of fun.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast 1 Live.
This is Doc with Doc and Lefty. We are here every Tuesday from 6 to 7 p.m. just to bring a little bit of entertainment and political knowledge to the local community and worldwide. Before the break, we were talking a little bit about this segment about the ongoing Republican Party's schism. I kind of like the young and the rhinos, and what was the one I came up with? I can't even remember. It wasn't that good. So if you have any ideas, let us know. I'm hoping that by next week we'll have our website up and ready to go, and then you can really talk to us while there. Now, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I had nothing. You had it taken care of.
Yeah, you're right. You got nothing. You know why?
Nothing.
You know why? Because the President of the United States is acting like an elitist jerk about this sequester. There's email leaks which showed that, he wants the sequester to be as painful as possible. So essentially what he's doing is firing the people that work for the United States, mainly, in the military, cutting off the GI Bill, which I think is a terrible idea because these people went out and risked their lives. They're cutting off wounded veterans benefits. And I think, that's just a very terrible thing to have happen. I think that they can make better decisions out there, such as cutting loose the stenographer for the White House. That's number one. 2, I think the Congress, during the portion of this sequester, should, forfeit their salaries. We're $85 million short, which in the whole scheme of things really isn't much. But they're really picking things that are that benefit our entire society. A stenographer for the White House does not benefit the entire society. Being able to take White House tours with people that volunteer is something that benefits us. Benefiting our veterans is a thing that I think we need to stay with. It just turns out that if you add up all of Congress's pay and all of Obama's pay, just the senators and congressmen, you come up with $91 million. So I think I found a solution to the sequester. Over to you.
Well, I guess calling the president as a jerk is pretty good.
Elitist jerk.
Elitist jerk is a pretty good start to the conversation. I guess I don't really agree, since the president's not the one in charge of the money, and it's all of the cuts that were involved in this whole sequestration were agreed to by wide majorities in both the House and the Senate, and the president signed the bill. So I guess, blaming this on the president is just, it's a complete and total total abdication of the power of the purse by Congress, apparently, because you see John Boehner, and here's what's funny about the politics of this. You had Republicans just incensed throughout the first 4 years that the president would blame the recession caused by funding 2 wars on the credit card and the tax cut and the Medicare Part D giveaway, incensed that the president would call back and say that the previous Bush administration was the fault that was laid at their feet. Just, he's not taking responsibility. He's not taking ownership. He's not doing what he's supposed to do. We need a leader. We don't need someone going around telling us the truth all the time. Well, now you got John Boehner blaming the whole thing on the president and the Senate, saying they're not doing their work. And you're the Speaker of the House of Representatives. You have the majority in the House of Representatives. All appropriations, all financial bills start in the House. It's in Article 1 of the Constitution. And it feels more like to me that the congressional Republicans, probably held hostage by the Tea Party wing, are not taking ownership themselves. And that is, I think the case in point there is that the president's reaching out to Republicans who aren't in the leadership. Mitch McConnell wasn't invited to that lunch that they had the other day.
Well, now I'm going to tell you, the sequester was suggested by Obama as a way to be able to kick the responsibility down the road and to be able to work something out in the meantime. Well, the problem is Obama has not really shown any kind of measure of wanting to reach out, wanting to work with Republicans.
It's not his responsibility. That's the whole thing that's so nuts to me is you have these Republicans who have been in lockstep opposition since day one, saying, oh, we got to have the president's got to lead. The president's got to lead. The president's got to lead. Bring a bill and put it in front of the president or go to committee, get some Democrats to sign on with you and make him veto it. I don't understand this whole notion that the president has to be in complete and total agreement with the opposite political party at all times, or else they're going to put their fingers in their ears and hold their noses and kick and scream like a 5-year-old. Well,
the bottom line is you're absolutely right. That's Congress's job to do that. However, the president holds a great deal of influence, and the Congress isn't the one that decides specifically what gets cut. They just decide how much in each department is going to get cut. And when you have the President of the United States writing to you and stating, listen, make this hurt as much as possible, in other words, screw the little guy, then that really tells me that the president really wants to hit the poor. Now, one of the interesting things that I read today was all the taxes that are coming out to have a gun. This all comes from Obama. As you know, taxes that affect the poor people more. Taxes that on things you purchase hurt poor people more. And that's essentially what's happening is you have a single individual who is saying, well, since I didn't get my way and sequester happened and I didn't get them to cave in again, I'm going to make things as punishable as possible, as painful as possible. And that's what these emails show. So I'm not quite sure how you can say, and I get the point about it's up to the Congress because we agree on that. Mm-hmm. Congress has abdicated its responsibility. Stick a pair on yourself, John, and get it done. All right. Now, Paul Ryan did come out with a budget today, but it still doesn't mean that Obama isn't trying to put the hurt on the little guy because they're letting people go at the White House that are giving the tour, but they're keeping very expensive staffers that honestly aren't needed.
Well, I guess I don't know about that stuff specifically because I'm not privy to all the hiring and firing decisions in the White House. But what I will say is, so Paul Ryan came out with a budget today. Yes. He came out with legislation today?
Yeah, he came out with a budget, and I believe that he's going to introduce the bill either late this week or early next week.
Okay, so we have legislation finally.
Yes. Goes
to the Senate. They make a big stink all the time about how the Senate hasn't passed anything in 6 years?
Something like that.
5 years, something like that. I wonder why that is. Could it possibly be that to get anything through the Senate requires 60 votes now? Could that possibly be the reason why the Senate doesn't get anything done is because the minority party is holding them hostage? I mean, when you talk about the way, we all know that everything is bogged down in Congress. We know that 100%. And we know that it's because of divisive, just really getting to the point where it's mean-spirited partisanship. That's really what it's come down to. And where we harken back to the days of Tip O'Neill at this point, which I don't think at the time anybody would have harkened back to as the example of partisanship, because Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan really didn't get along all that much. And you see a lot of rewriting of the history of, well, they were great buddies, they just butted heads on matters of principle. No, in fact, they didn't like each other all that much. Tip O'Neill thought Ronald Reagan was pretty dumb. Am I wrong about that?
No, I mean, I agree. I mean, I was there. I mean, it was just downright hostility.
But they were still able to get things done because why? What's changed?
Well, specifically, now, unfortunately, I have to take a break. I'm going to come back and I'm going to give Lefty a history lesson about the 1986-87 tax package that led to the infamous no new taxes. We'll be back right after the break. I want to thank everybody for tuning in, and I want to thank everybody for listening to these commercials because that's what allows our studio to continue to operate. Frank, get us out of here.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Whether you're 10, 25, 50, 80 years old and beyond, everyone needs to live within their means. I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America. For almost a quarter of a century, we've helped people of all ages learn to manage their personal finances to benefit them far into the future. When problems arise, we've got the experience you need to make those debt problems go away. Got financial problems? Call Consumer Credit of America.
If Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of America was your personal webmaster, Tom would filter out all bad debt emails. If Tom was your mailman, you'd never get any debt reduction junk mail. If Tom Coates was a lineman, he'd block any phone calls offering to reduce your credit card debt.
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America, and we're still your best choice for credit counseling. We're local, we're accountable, and we can do more. You make the call when the time's right for you.
When it comes to competition, there really is none for Consumer Credit of America.
This is Doc with Doc and Lefty. We're here every Tuesday from 6 to 7 p.m. on webcast1live.com. Right before the break, Lefty and I were talking about the partisanship and the rancor that's occurring in Congress now. We were talking about Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan getting along. I can tell you, I worked out in D.C. during that period of time, and I can tell you that they didn't like each other. We didn't. For the most part, Republicans really had a deep loathing for Tip O'Neill, and the Democrats had a deep loathing for Ronald Reagan, a wildly popular president, which, smacked them in the face, in 2 elections. And what really happened is they finally sat down in a place called Gucci Gulch, and there's a book by that name, and that gives a very good history of this. They sat down. And what they finally agreed to, Ronald Reagan said, all right, I will give some on raising some taxes, just some, not all, just a little bit. And Tip O'Neill said, great, we're going to go ahead and do do spending reductions. So they signed this into law. And what happened is we got the tax raises, but we didn't get the spending reductions. And that's how they came up with that plan. And the problem is we've learned from history. The Republicans have learned from history. Whenever the Democrats said, well, yeah, we'll reduce taxes and spending down the road, it never happens. It's just more and more. So what you have is fiscal conservatives, not only the Tea Party, but straight fiscal conservatives, who are saying, you've already had the biggest tax hike in history. You've just had that. You had other taxes hidden in the Obamacare package, in the stimulus package. At what point do you go, you know what, we're bringing in more money than we ever had before, but we still can't pay our bills. And when you're at that point, which is where we're at, you need to reduce your spending. That is what a lot of the rancor comes from, I believe, because you have a group of Republicans that simply cannot trust the Democrats to follow through on their spending reduction.
You see, what we had at the beginning of the first term of the Obama administration was the biggest recession since the Great Depression. You hear this all the time, and in fact, I'm going to be spouting some punditry that I picked up over the last several years because we're in the same spot we were back in 2008 for the most part, except the economy is picking up faster now than it has. 236,000 jobs created in February. We're actually starting to put jobs back that are sustainable at this point. And there's no denying those numbers. Unemployment's fallen finally to the lowest it's been in 4 years. It's still high, but it's the trends are all in the right direction. Biggest recession since the Great Depression. And what everybody sort of used to agree, but now for some reason we don't agree now, is that government spending in a recession benefits the economy because it creates demand in the economy. Everyone used to agree on that. That used to be a no-brainer, but now it's back in 2008. That's where a lot of this disagreement came from, and the president actually reduced taxes. Payroll taxes and Social Security taxes went down between 2008 and 2012. They went down.
You mean the percentage, or do you mean the amount collected?
The percentage. Those went down. That's the big lie that you hear from conservatives that Obama's raised taxes. He hasn't. On the first $250,000 in income, he hasn't. They have now because that tax holiday. He gave a Social Security tax holiday back in like 2009, I believe, that expired in 2012 or in 2013 when they couldn't get a deal done on the fiscal cliff. Then All those overall tax gave the extent of the Bush tax cut 2013, but that expired when couldn't get a deal done on the fiscal cliff. So what you've seen is less the president raising taxes, which is something that presidents can't do constitutionally anyway, and more allowing things to lapse because these Republicans simply wouldn't work with him.
Well, here's the thing. Now, to your assertion that everybody's always agreed that government spending during a time of recession helps the economy, there's a lot of people disagree with that. Milton Friedman being he
came around before he died.
Well, I have never read anything like that says, I mean, Reagan, let's compare Obama to Reagan. Reagan had a pretty nasty go of it himself. Plus, he had to deal with 22% interest rates, unlike Obama that's had to deal with very low interest rates when he took over. In 18 months, Reagan, through properly targeting spending and proper tax reduction, was able to turn our economy around so it was booming at 18 months later, 18 months, 2 years later. 5 years later, we're still struggling. Everybody's getting used to the new normal being bad. And I don't think that's the way America's built.
Ronald Reagan increased government jobs. He increased military spending, and he increased overall federal employment during the recession. That increased to increase the budget, increased government spending on those particular jobs. Barack Obama has slashed that stuff. More federal jobs lost since Obama took office than when Reagan took office. Reagan increased them, Obama's reduced them. We see what happens. Federal jobs are real jobs. They do they have a real effect in the real economy. Real spending occurs, and that money gets transferred and flows through just like any other paycheck would. And when you see those kinds of jobs being lost at the demand of Republicans, slashing federal spending at the beginning of the Obama administration, that's what happens.
Well, but you can't take money from one person and give it to somebody else and call it a job, because that money comes from people that pay taxes. I've used this analogy before. It's like a giant game of Monopoly. If you pay all your taxes to the bank so it's not in circulation, then at some point that game gets pretty short. And that's what basically happens when you're using government funds to create jobs, because that money doesn't just appear out of nowhere. You can't keep just printing money after money, because then you develop an inflationary system. And the problem is at some point, guys like me that don't work for the government really can't get by. One of the interesting conversations I had with my brother Mike in Hawaii is he works fully for the government. He's talking about how great it is and everything else. Fantastic. But I'm the guy paying his salary. And when you take money and take money from one area and shift it to another area, it's not a system that can sustain itself long term. That's straightforward thinking. I mean, how do you continue to go, well, geez, how big is the government going to get? How much is our economy going to be driven by the government and the whims of bureaucrats? Because we can see what happens when it's driven by the whims of bureaucrats, whether they're Republican or Democrat. The other thing is we had stimulus one under Bush, and that was a miserable failure. So Obama comes out, hey, we're going to have stimulus two. Well, that's still a miserable failure. It hasn't done anything that Obama says it's going to do.
Stimulus one was an $800 paycheck to an individual, $400 paycheck to an individual, $800 paycheck to a family. Just $800. Wow. Thanks. Thank you very much, President Bush, for that $800. What I'm going to use that for is to pay down some of my personal debt that I have, which has no real effect to the real economy. President Obama's stimulus included the tax holiday and tax cuts to people on their payroll taxes. That does have a real effect on the real economy. And the stimulus, if you talk to nonpartisan economists, the stimulus has worked.
Well, the trick is, if you talk to nonpartisan economists, there's a lot of them said it hasn't worked, hasn't done anywhere near it was. The second thing is being in a position to defend Bush, is one of the tasks that faces a conservative. Now, everybody talks about the Bush era tax cuts. They don't call it the Obama era tax cuts. So Bush is the one that came up with these tax cuts first. And stimulus didn't have just a check to people. It had several other things associated with it.
I got a check.
Now, well, I didn't, well, because, you were, you weren't doing that well then. Back then, I mean, you were a student and all that. Yeah. So now when we get back, we're going to get back to how the sequester is screwing our veterans. And this is going to be a little bit longer break, but please keep watching, keep patronizing our sponsors, and we'll be back right after break. Thank you for tuning in.
I'm Brian Leach, owner and general manager of Service Legends. I brought along a couple of the home comfort heroes.
Hi, I'm Tammy Wells.
I am Nick Wondershide.
I'm administrative manager.
I'm the senior technician
from Service Legends.
It seems like every good thing, when you feel it to the bone that it's good, there's a lot of hard work put behind it. I don't think that you can fake it and have it turn out good.
If we seem like, okay, that's just weird, it's just a furnace, why would you believe so deeply in a furnace? It's not just that, we want to show the world that you can have good service.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be, it's your home.
It's built into our daily trainings, it's built into our culture, that we're going to do whatever it takes to have each client say they love us, period.
That's why we spend all the hours in the training that we do. And if we guarantee it's going to be a good experience for you, or else it's free, what type of work do you think we're going to do?
There is a guarantee.
Temperature selection guarantee, fixed rider it's free guarantee, comfort guarantee, best value guarantee. All of these guarantees hold us accountable to ensuring that we exceed your expectations. And if for whatever reason we'd fail and we can't make it right, we guarantee all of those guarantees with a 100% money back guarantee.
I mean, if you don't think that your technician can fix it right, are you going to say that to a client? No.
You don't have to worry about having a technician come to your house.
We drug test, background check all of our team members. We put safe people in your home. Each and every one of our service techs, 400 hours a year in training.
You tell it the minute they walk in the door. They know what they're doing, they've done their homework, and they actually truly care about what you want.
Because at the end of the day, you're the person that makes sure I have a job.
They're going to be listening. They're going to want to know what your challenges are. Then they're going to come and give you options, and you get to choose.
If I'm there to help and I make it easy and painless, I did my job right that day.
Well, when it comes to your comfort, safety, and your family, you don't necessarily go buy the most expensive, but you get the most bang for your buck.
Oh, it's worth it, because there's a lot of people that will find a way to get it to work right now and then leave and then come back, charge you again, and the cycle just repeats itself. So when I'm out there looking at the furnace, I want to find why it failed today. How can we change the part today with something that you're not going to have to worry about? Is it worth changing the part today? I mean, you can put a lot of money into a furnace. I can fix parts all day. There's good job security in that for me. But is it the right thing for you?
I get a lot of the phone calls of after the technicians are there. They're just in awe. They're like, wow, you guys are great. I mean, I don't even know what to say. You guys are great. Everything you did was perfect. It was great.
Keep going though, I like this.
Just give us a try. I'm gonna take all the risk.
I've got the time to make this right. I've got the support to make it right.
Just check us out.
And if you don't see the value in what we do,
I mean, fixed rider, it's free or 100% money back.
Enough said.
This is Doc with Doc and Lefty. Thanks for tuning in tonight. We appreciate each and every one of our listeners. If you want to call in, the number is 855-244-0077. One of the tragic things that I found out when my son came home for the weekend was that they just got notice that they're cutting the GI Bill, that apparently the freeze is in place. And for my son, that's a big issue for him. He planned his college career for, around getting help. And apparently it's going to short him somewhere around $3,000 a year, which, to a high-powered lawyer like Lefty over here is, just chump change. But still, that really throws a crimp in the thing. Now, the good thing about Pat is he's got a dad that's a doctor. But there's a lot of guys out there, including, remember Chris Chambers? Mm-hmm. There's good guys like Chris Chambers who have been in the line of fire several times and going to school to, improve himself and still going overseas, and yet now he doesn't get the GI Bill. There are wounded warriors everywhere, even in Des Moines, that are now not going to be able to access the care that they needed before. Now, I understand that there's like the regular Army, the regular Marines, the active duty people are not going to be affected by this. But keep in mind, the National Guard is the one that has done most of the heavy lifting since 2000. This is not your grandpa's guard where, your weekend warriors and you run around. These guardsmen are deployed. They're deployed for a year at a time. One of our guests and one of our friends is now, Jeff Hash, is now overseas. And I think since you met him, he's been home maybe 6 months. These are the people that are getting shorted. These are the people that the brass has decided to cut. And I think that we really need to step back, and particularly the President of the United States, and figure out what our priorities are. I don't think our priority should be a stenographer. I don't think our priority should be, Michelle Obama's 50th birthday party. I think our priority should be making sure our veterans are taken care of, making sure that those that have been wounded in the line of battle are taken care of. And I don't think that screwing the GIs, as far as GI Bill goes, is the way to go. And I think it's absolutely horrific. And I think the president, along with members of Congress, should use their influence to say, listen, let's not hit these poor people. Let's start cutting other things like, buying jets or Department of Homeland Services buying all those tanks. Now, I know Lefty's kind of a radical, but I think that he would actually agree with me. What do you say?
I would agree to the extent that I think that veterans should be taken care of, and the GI Bill is one of the things that helped build the middle class in the 50s after World War II.
Absolutely.
And so it's really important in that, and I haven't seen that proposal, and I don't know if that's really if it actually has gone into effect as far as real dollars are concerned yet. But I guess what I would say is the cuts to defense and the cuts to the military, those were designed to get a response from congressional Republicans. Those cuts were designed to say, hey, we need to do something about these financial issues. And honestly, the political analysis that I have is that Republicans would rather see veterans go without the GI Bill than raise taxes on the top 2% of income earners in this country. That's what it comes down to.
Well, I think I think that's an unfair characterization. I think that the Republicans are much more interested in not paying for Michelle Obama's birthday. I think they're much more interested in not having to pay for extensive trips for POTUS. I think the Republicans are much more interested in reestablishing proper protocols for determining how we cut our budget. I think
the president, when everything that the president says, he agrees with all of that. The president agrees with everything. He said that he came out and said that he'd rather have seen a scalpel than a cleaver approach, but members of Congress let it happen. So once again, we're seeing this sort of confusion between what the president's responsible for and what the Congress is responsible for. The president right now is doing what presidents do, and that's using the bully pulpit. We're getting irritated with the president being out stumping for all this stuff and blaming everybody all the time, but that's kind of what presidents have always done. The president, as a singular figure, has more power in that regard. He can command more attention as one guy rather than a single member of a 535-member body. However, the Congress has the power of the money. And if the congressional Republicans had been willing to say, you know what, top 2% earners, yeah, no, fine, we got it. We're uncle, we give. You won the election, you ran on that. That's what the people want us to do. We give. Instead, they want to protect their moneyed interests, and the veterans do without.
Well, first of all, I disagree 100% with that characterization. It would be kind of like, after George Bush had both houses of Congress, telling the Democrats, well, hey, we won, game over, don't represent your people.
Sort of what he did.
Well,
actually, I remember those days pretty well.
Well, but the Democrats didn't just roll over and lay down. But the bottom line
sort of did.
They did.
It was bad being a Democrat in the early 2000s. I'm just saying.
Well, just because you guys weren't running wild with your, strong communistic, theories and running in the streets.
I was a card-carrying subscriber to the socialist paper that the random bearded guy and I was sitting in the Ped Mall handed out every Tuesday. It was awesome.
Well, good. But the bottom line is I think everybody can agree. We need to make sure that, we don't need more private jets for, the congressmen. We don't need more tanks for DHS because what do they ever need with them? We don't need to buy more bullets for the government institutions outside of the military. We don't need a stenographer at the White House. And I know I'm getting on that, but the guy makes $200,000 a year, right? That's basically the same amount of money that they're saving by, not having tours of the White House. I think that the president can utilize his influence to send to the heads of the department, instead of, hey, make it hurt, say, listen, let's go ahead and make sure our veterans are taken care of. That would be a much better stump than, well, geez, who did Michelle Obama invite to her birthday party? I mean, this bash is in the millions, right? Every time POTUS takes off to go someplace, it's in the millions. If we simply backed up and went, listen, we're not going to do a lot of extraneous travel, even though it's a lot of fun for the president, but we have real decisions that we have to make.
I don't remember hearing this kind of crap, frankly, about the president traveling around the country, around the world, when it was G.W. Bush and Air Force One. I never heard one single Republican. It costs money to be the president. Everybody knows that. I've also never once heard an American begrudge the president, not just this birthday party, which is complete nonsense, but begrudge the president vacation time the way that this president's been begrudged. Democrats made a lot of jokes and made a lot of big points about how George W. Bush took the most vacation days of any president of all time. We made a lot of jokes in that regard. A lot of people pointed that out, cutting wood and clearing brush down on the ranch. Fine, I'll admit that to you. However, the folks out here talking about how the president's not entitled to do these things. He's the president of the United States, for crying out loud. If the president of the United States isn't entitled to play golf with Tiger Woods and get his dinner at like 4 a.m. if he wants it, then who is? Every president has done that. That's nothing new. And to say that now, because we have this budget crisis, now that which isn't really a budget crisis in the short term, now that we've got all this money that we don't have, which we do have, now that the country's broke, which it's not, it's a problem.
Well, the couple of things. One, my issue with this is, and the truth is, I shouldn't call the president an elitist jerk. All right. But basically, what he's doing is feeding into his image as being disconnected from the people, as being aloof from the people. And the other thing is, I tell my patients this all the time. You can't point to somebody else's bad behavior to justify your own. Now, we are in an economic crisis. We are having problems meeting our bills, and we are having, even though it might be short term, how bad does it have to be now before we go, geez, look at how much more worse it's going to be down the road?
Ask Paul Ryan. But anyway, we've got to go to a break.
All right.
And come back with days of, I don't know,
days of the rhino.
Something stupid.
Something. Yeah, or usually we have Tim call him. We kind of miss him.
I saw a few lights light up, but it must not have been anybody who wanted to talk to us.
No, well, we stumbled across that quite a bit.
It's true. It's a good thing that you're my friend.
Yes, because all right. Well, we'll be back right after the break. Please watch our sponsors. They help us keep our studio running. We'll be back in just a minute.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Whether you're 10, 25, 50, 80 years old and beyond, everyone needs to live within their means. I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America. For almost a quarter of a century, we've helped people of all ages learn to manage their personal finances to benefit them far into the future. When problems arise, we've got the experience you need to make those debt problems go away. Got financial problems? Call Consumer Credit of America.
If Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of America was your personal webmaster, Tom would filter out all bad debt emails. If Tom was your mailman, you'd never get any debt reduction junk mail. If Tom Coates was a lineman, he'd block any phone calls offering to reduce your credit card debt.
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America, and we're still your best choice for credit counseling. We're local, we're accountable, and we can do more. You make the call when the time's right for you.
When it comes to competition, there really is none for Consumer Credit of America.
All right.
So,
what?
Lefty's
bringing us in.
No, I'm not. Go ahead.
Well, now you're on the camera now.
Well, anyway, this is Lefty, the Doc and Lefty.
This is how organized we are.
And, we got wrapped up in a conversation off air. We were talking, and we'll maybe save that for another show because I think we could probably do.
Well, I threw my chicken in the ring.
Oh, you did?
Yes.
Okay. Well, we could probably do about 20 minutes of that. But anyway, what we're kind of talking about, the ongoing soap opera that is the Republican Party, and honestly, if you see some of the numbers that come out in favor for the president, his job approval rating has dropped significantly over the last couple of weeks, suggesting maybe that he has overplayed his hand a little bit with the sequestration, or that people are just sick of everything, that the honeymoon is over, and that they want him to get on to different aspects of legislation that he promised. I think what you're seeing a lot of those approval ratings drop are the folks that said, "Oh my gosh, State of the Union, we're going to get climate change. Oh my gosh, Sandy Hook, we're going to get gun reform." Like all these big ticket social, not social policy, but all these big ticket legislative things that the president has kind of suggested over the last few months are going by the wayside because he's in a bicker fit with John Boehner about the budget.
Yes, I would agree. Well, and the other thing is Congress is at an all-time low, but that doesn't say much because, you can't go much lower than where they're at. And I think the 8%
herpes are more popular than Congress right now. I read that someplace.
Really?
Some British firm did a bunch of funny polling, and that like dung beetles polled higher than Congress. Just a lot of funny, different, distasteful things, and that was one of them.
Well, they've been down around the 8% mark. There for a bit, they were up around 12%. Now they're down to 8%. And I suspect that 8% are the ones that, are dependent upon the Congress for their job. Because otherwise, I don't know. I don't have anything else that would explain it.
And congressional pollsters probably.
Oh, yeah.
The ones conducting these polls are probably, we like Congress.
Yep.
Skew their data a little bit.
And, the schism is nationwide. I mean, you want to talk about the Tea Party means a lot of different things to a lot of people. To the left, it means a bunch of whack jobs. To guys like me, I'm like, well, I'm finally happy. Somebody's saying, enough taxes, we need to reduce spending. There's a guy named Eric Cantor who's always looking over the shoulder of John Boehner. And John Boehner has a hell of a job on his hand trying to make sure that his constituency stays together. Frank, we got a call? Holy cow.
Good evening. You are on the air.
Yes, this is Tim.
Hey, Tim.
Hey, Tim.
We missed you.
I just heard you commenting, so now I had to call.
No, I know. Now, Pat got a letter, I think, that said that they were going to cut the GI Bill. Have you gotten any letter like that?
You know what? This drill last weekend was one of my drills for the Marine Reserve, and we heard that the unit out in Nebraska had 75 people cut. They just were told to go home.
No kidding.
The military.
So they just booted them out of the military?
What's that?
They kicked them out of the military? They told them?
Yeah, they did we no longer can afford to pay you. You have honorable discharge, but we can't pay you anymore, so you're out.
Well, at least it was honorable. But Tim, I got to ask you, so that doesn't sound very good, obviously. Do you have any thoughts about the sequestration or what should be happening and what's not happening?
It sounds like they're trying to make it as painful as possible. It's not even a cut in our spending. It's a cut in the rise of our spending.
What would you do differently?
And, the Paul Ryan budget is saying that he wants to increase the spending every year by 3 to 5% to get it to a balanced budget. That's still an increase.
Yeah.
So the fact that anyone's, saying that this is, taking away money from the government and ruining the government, first off, it was Obama's idea. And second off, it's not taking any money away. It's just putting a cap on how much they can
so
the government.
So essentially they're not cutting back spending on non-essential stuff. They're basically just firing people.
Yeah, and then and Obama said, hey, this is going to destroy the world if this goes through, and he campaigned for it instead of talking to anyone about it, anyone important in Congress, and now he has to make it as painful as possible, so he's not out there as a liar.
So do you think he's got a little bit too much influence over over how the money that is going to be cut is how it's going to be cut?
I don't think he has too much influence over how things are being cut, but I think he has a lot of influence with the people who are doing the cutting. So I guess, indirectly he does.
All right.
And would you say that Congress has any responsibility for any of this at all?
What's that?
Would you hold any congressional member to the fire over the sequestration at all?
No, I'm not that informed on it to name out political people in Congress.
well, that's why you listen, Tim, to get educated, right? So
that's why I listen, and I listen to the talk radio all day, and my girlfriend hates me for it.
Oh, well, that's right. Oh, yeah, Tim's pregnant. So
I know. Yeah, we know we had heard that.
Yeah, so that's great. Everything's going well there. Hello?
There's one more thing I wanted to say, but I can't remember what it was.
Oh, well, right. That's okay. Well, Tim, thanks for calling in. We appreciate your perspective.
All right. Thanks a lot, Tim. Bye-bye.
Yep, no problem.
Bye.
So thanks to Tim for calling in. It's always fun to hear from him.
Yeah. He doesn't. He's one of those guys that he must be working a lot and not able to listen to us all the time. But so you were talking about Eric Cantor.
And the fact that Boehner's having a heck of a time trying to keep his coalition together, and the fierce opposition from Eric Cantor and the Tea Party and the fiscal conservatives, that basic schism is continuing to spill out. But at least here in Iowa, it isn't necessarily over the fiscal stuff, but it's really hitting a high note as far as the social issues go. We went to Celebrate Life. Mm-hmm. And there were several notable absences from Celebrate Life. This is a giant thing put on by the RPI. None of the congressmen were there. Senator Grassley wasn't there. And it was sponsored by the RPI.
Spiker wasn't there, was he?
No, AJ Spiker was.
No,
he was.
He was?
Yeah, he was there and spoke. Most of the
sparsely attended.
Yes. But the people that were there were gung-ho. And then this last week, Chad Earhart, who is the Dallas County auditor, I believe, and he's very popular, very conservative, basically came out with a statement that said, I'm going to support gay marriage. That's basically what it said. The exact phrasing escapes me now. But essentially, that's another broadside across the Christian conservative front. And the problem that the Republicans are going to have to face is Christian conservatives have a tendency to have a lot of money. And you need to be able to get them on your side in order to get the money flowing through.
Well, here's my question, though. It's interesting to me to kind of understand like where they're going to go. Because I think that what you've seen over these last two elections, 2008 and 2012, what the Republicans are starting to realize, or maybe what they're thinking, even if they're mistaken about what their analysis of the political landscape, that the Christian coalition that has sort of sustained them for years and years and years since Falwell in the 70s, kind of kick the whole thing off, is no longer necessary. And not even maybe unnecessary, but a hindrance to winning national elections. What do you think about that?
Well, I don't think that the Christian coalition, for lack of a better term, is a detriment to the Republican Party. I think kowtowing to people with money, and in this case, the Christian coalition, is always going to be a problem for the Republican Party. Let's say that Obama had gotten defeated. Let's say Mitt pulled it off and he's now president. The first thing that the Democrats always look at is, well, how have the gays helped us? How has the unions helped us? And that's the fight we saw when Reagan was in power. It's also the fight we saw when Bush was in power. And, we've talked a couple of shows ago about how the Democrats have seemed to coalesce and get everything figured out.
More recently, they've been better at that, yeah.
And the problem is like I try to tell people, if I come up to you and say, hi, I don't have an abortion, whether you're for abortion or against abortion, that's going to put you off. It's going to stop and make you go, well, really, that's kind of a strange thing to lead with. Whereas if you're out on a campaign trail and you say, I want jobs, I want to get our economy back, And in the process of getting our economy back, we'll have less desire for abortion. And with less desire for abortion, maybe we can start to outlaw it, right? Maybe we can start getting people together. That's how you discuss these issues. The gay marriage issue is the same thing. I've said several times, part of that decision with gay marriage that got Bob Vanderplaats all wound up is the fact that you can't, challenge or you can't take away people's property rights. And that was part of the decision, right? And so the more you try to legislate morality, the more loopholes you get where people can push back on.
Well, I see it just slightly a different way, and obviously I find the notion of a Republican strategy that starts off with economic issues, then slips poison pill social issues in there just a little bit distasteful, but it's politics and it happens, right? Anyway, what I would say though about gay marriage specifically and about the religious objection is that I think that what you're seeing is this final, not backlash necessarily, because I think that religion is still fairly popular overall in this country, but a pushback of younger folks, more sort of libertine-minded, even though I don't want to use those terms because I'm not talking about the political science libertarianism here, but just these sort of freedom-minded younger generation saying, look, I can be Christian and not care about two guys getting married, or I can be a committed Lutheran and attend a wedding of two women, and it's because my faith is personal to me myself. And so they're seeing this sort of disconnect of religion as public policy. And I think there was a grand experiment spearheaded by the coalition over the last few decades to sort of graft religion and public policy together in a way that I think that people accepted for a long time. But now we're seeing more and more folks coming out, and it could be a pendulum swing. You never know how these things will tend to turn out. But it does look like a general trend, not necessarily away from religious faith, but away from religious faith as public policy.
Well, and I would agree with that. One of the things I talk about sometimes is, we're growing. These kids have grown up in the MTV generation, and more importantly, the Jackass generation, where whatever you do is okay as long as you get, the laughs and the, whatever else is going on. Apparently, Frank you having a seizure in there, Frank? Frank's okay. Is he okay?
He's okay.
All right. So you have these problems with this generation that says, they grew up with lesbianism rampant on MTV and on the cable channels. They grew up, with these shows that feature gay and lesbian lifestyles, and they're much more, inured to it. Whatever you want to do is fine. I don't feel like I have the right to tell somebody that. And the other thing, and the point that you've made, and I've made several times, particularly about gay marriage, it's a state issue. It is a state issue and not a national issue. And the state determines who gets married. Yep. You have to have a marriage license in order to go to the church.
If you want to talk about sort of just general attacks on state sovereignty, and we talk about them a lot, but the DOMA is a glaring example of one of those things where the federal government comes out and says, you don't have to recognize gay marriages, and flies in the face of the full faith and credit clause of the Constitution.
Yeah.
It really does. But but it did leave it. I mean, I can kind of see the rationale where it left it up to the states to decide, but basically what it did was ban gay marriage nationwide. Yeah. And it's a local issue, and it should be
a local issue. Now, one of the things that I've found is very interesting is usually when you have somebody like Chad that comes out and says something in direct opposition to the policy, to the platform, you usually have a lot of blowback. There hasn't been a lot of criticism. In fact, I haven't really heard any criticism of Chad's stance. Now, we're gonna finish the show. Lefty is going to be here with Sean Bright this week at the Flying Moose, the Duck Blind, And
now the Flying Moose on Thursday from 9 until 1 a.m. Jimmy's Big Ten on 8th Street in West Des Moines from 6 to 9, maybe later, depending on how happy the happy hour is. And Ducktail Lounge from 8 until 1. We are with at the Ducktail we have a special guest. Joel Pinkerton will be performing as well at Ducktail, so you want to get there early when the doors open at noon to full day of St. Patrick's Day celebration, fun, and good music.
Absolutely. Now, the Republicans are going to be down at the